First of all, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for wasting your time here on me. Thank you for Merkaz Beniya, Iran for inviting me. It's really an honor to be here. First of all, my name is Mark Brown. We have a company called Metropolitan. Here in Israel, it's called Metropolitan Israel. In New York, it's Metropolitan New York. In Italy, it's Metropolitan Italy. And what we do in our company is a little bit different. We're architects, we're interior designers, and we're builders. So all of our projects that we do are projects that not only did we design, we also built them as well. I don't know if that's unique here for people to do that, but we basically have total control over our projects. And I'll get into the reason why we do that and how that's kashur to building here and building there. I also want to explain a little bit about the pictures, what's up there. I'm not really used to speaking publicly. Most of my life I do everything very privately. And I think speeches are pretty boring. So what I wanted to do was show pictures of work that we do, motorcycles, cars that we design and build, homes that we design and build, friends of mine, clients of mine. And I wanted to show you sort of like a life story of everything that we do. And I also want to explain through the pictures, because I grew up a little bit different. I grew up a little bit unique. I grew up on one side of my family in a very big fashion house in Italy, the House of Fendi. And I grew up on the other side of the family, my father's side, which were like master woodmen, craftsmen. So I really learned my design. You know, I went to Yale, I went to Columbia for architecture and engineering, but the truth is I learned my design from, I really think one of the greatest fashion designers in the world, Valentino. And I think fashion and building and architecture have a lot to do with each other. And one of the things that I actually learned from him at a very young age was, I tell this story over all the time. The truth is I really didn't mean to say it today, but I remember when I was a little kid, I was sitting in my grandmother's kitchen in Italy, in Milano, and Valentino was there. My grandmother was designing a fur coat, and she had all the fur on the table, and she was cutting it, and she was sewing it, and she was stretching it, and she was putting it together. And I remember he said to me, you know, watch your grandmother work, and she knows how to take this from A to Z. She knows how to design, put it together, do every step. And he said that if you don't know how to do every step of your job, then you can never become great. And it sunk into me, and that's really the direction that we've been trying to do for many years, really to become great. One of the things also why you'll see cars and motorcycles, it happens to be a big passion of mine, especially building motorcycles. We have a company that we build custom motorcycles, but I happen to think that motorcycles encompasses the full range of design and build more than any other type of building, because you have metal work, you have painting, you have leather work, you have mechanics. It's amazing, and it's real artistry. And sometimes I get yelled at the office because I'm always working on a motorcycle in the middle of the architect's office. And but it's like a passion. I mean, I think anyone in this business, I'm sure everyone sitting here is in this business. You do it because you love it, and when you're passionate about something, it really shows in your work. One of the things that what I really want to try to speak about today is how we do projects, how we take a project from start to finish, how we start with the architecture, we start with the interior design, we build out the pricing, and then we eventually build the project. Right until the sheets, the plates, everything, we're involved in every detail of the project. When I was asked today by Iran to speak about the differences between building here and say building abroad, my first answer was money. That's the big difference, and you finish with your speech. But I have to tell you something. After working here in Israel, it's a little bit. I made Aliyah with my family, and it really is a big honor to be here. I have my children, my grandchildren. They all live in Israel, and it's a big honor to be here. So the big difference also is that I decided to live here. I wasn't born here, so my attitude is a little bit different. It's not. I established myself before I came, and one of the other things that Iran asked me to speak about was, before I get to that subject, was really like the people that I've done work for. It's true, I've done famous people's homes, but I'm not a famous architect. There's a big difference. Like when I first got started in business, I was in Yale College, University for architecture, and I was doing construction work for a building company. I was working physically building, and that company was doing a job for this woman, Donna Karen, who's a fashion designer. So Donna, she said to me, I just bought an apartment. I'd love for you to do my house. And I said, listen, I'm not even sure if I'm going to continue this business, but basically I took a chance and I did her house. I didn't realize that she really liked me. She really didn't really care about my work. And then from Donna Karen, I did this woman, Bette Midler, who she's a singer, an actress, whatever. From her, I actually learned something really cool. I think her house is up here. It's the one with the neon green cabinets. She said to me, kid, I'm going to teach you how to design. And she took me to like a store, like a thrift store. And she told me the line that stuck with me forever. She said, anyone with money can do anything. But when you don't have money, that's when you really have to be creative. And we went from store to store, and we got like crappy stuff, and we put it together. And she really gave me this derech on how to, think out of the box. And then like when I started to do like these rappers, the way I got to rappers was also that a guy that used to work with me, his sister was married to this guy Run from Run DMC, which is a rap group. And so we did it at his brother-in-law's house, and then Run recommended this guy Russell Simmons, who is like a big music guy, and then he recommended me to this guy Jay-Z. And then, but it wasn't like, it's like Pella Ozen, I think they say here. It wasn't like some, superstar architect. It's a small world. Like I remember once when this woman, Dina Reese, called me up and said to me, you got to come down. I have a friend, my next door neighbor wants you to do her house. So I said, listen, I'm in traffic court. I got a ticket and I'm in court, which was not unusual. And she said, no, it's this woman, Nicole Kidman. And I said, all right, I'll come down. So I went down to meet her. And the truth is, I was trying to be cool. Like she said, I love the house you did for my neighbor and my friend, whatever. I said, and you are? And so she says, whatever, Nicole Kim. I said, what do you do? She said, I'm an actress. And I said, I was like really arrogant. I said, have I seen you in anything? And she says, so she shows me the house. There's like a street in Manhattan, if you know Manhattan, down on Perry Street. So in that street, like Ralph Lauren lives and Perry Ellis, may rest in peace. And I did those houses as well. So I knew that area, and I said to her, listen, I don't really know if we can work well together. I don't know if I want to do the job for you. So, whatever. So she's like, why don't we get a cup of coffee? And so we went to a coffee shop in the Village in Manhattan, and it was funny because that was it. She was in the middle of getting a divorce from Tom Cruise. So there's a paper in the Village called the Village Voice. So they had this picture of me and her in this coffee shop. It said from Scientology to Jewology. Who's the mystery rabbi? Like whatever. So whatever. So it wasn't like my name is like all over the place. And I was telling Ron this story before, was that 'cause if you get to know me, and I have to tell you, I have two people I work with, Dina and Ahuva, sitting in the back, really one of the greatest architects I've ever worked with. So they know me well. I'm not the smartest guy. I'm not but I love to work. So when I started, so I have a little bit of a niche in the fashion industry, and I started working with this fashion designer, Stella McCartney. So I was working with her for like a few months. I did a store for her. I really didn't know her that well. Like, I'm sure you guys know some clients you get very close with, some clients you don't get close with. And I wasn't really that close with her at that time, but I own a bar downtown in Manhattan called Hogs and Heifers. Like they made they made a movie out of my bar called Coyote Ugly, like whatever, with the girls dancing on the bar. So so the meatpacking district back then was really like a shithole. Sorry, a bad place to live and to whatever. And I was trying to tell Stella, why don't you move down to the meatpacking district? And so she called me. It was like literally a few hours before Pesach Seder. And she says, listen, I found the place downtown. You got to come down. And I said, listen, I don't have time. I can't really go down. Whatever. She convinced me to go down. I looked at the place and I said, okay, you know what? After the holidays, we'll go and we'll start working on the place. So she says to me, listen, my father's waiting outside. And So I said, all right, my father wants to meet me. So I go outside. There's a guy outside, and wearing jeans and a T-shirt. And he said to me, Mark, listen, I love your work. You do such beautiful work. So I said to him, what do you do? So he's like, I'm in music. So I said to him, good luck. I hope it goes well for you, So I didn't know this was Paul McCartney. Not that I know the Beatles, but it was like an old guy standing outside. I didn't know that was her father. So afterwards, I'm walking past him, and she hits me on the back, and I turn. I'm like, Stella, what are you doing? She's like, you don't know who my father is? Paul McCartney of the Beatles. And I remember thinking to myself, I was looking at this older guy, and I said to myself, he's ever going to make it in music, this guy. Every old guy wants to be in music. So that's that's really my story. It's just the motorcycles and stuff I build because I'm not very conventional. And so I was a kid. I stole a motorcycle when I was 9 years old from the police station. And I grew up in an Italian neighborhood, so where you were allowed to beat kids. And so I stole a motorcycle from the police station. So when I got home, my father and the police were waiting for me. And first the police beat me, and then my father beat me. But I got to keep the motorcycle. But I had to work in the police station for a year cleaning up the police station. But I love motorcycles. I don't know, they're just cool. And so I've always been building motorcycles. I built a really cool car that I drove here also, and it's a passion because when you're creative and when you do stuff, it's if there's no passion behind it, then it doesn't really matter. And I'll get to the money part in a second because it really is the most crucial thing, because money actually causes us to do a lot of bad things and a lot of good things. But money, running a business is really, really, really essential. It's funny. I'm sorry if I'm telling stories. If they're boring, you could tell. I know no one's going to say to stop, but I'm happy to stop. But when I moved here to Israel, so I sent 2 motorcycles. I built a couple of motorcycles for Harley Davidson. Designed and built for Harley Davidson, 2 bikes, and I brought 2 bikes here, and they wouldn't let it into the country because the guys from Harley Davidson, they wouldn't allow it. They didn't want me to start building bikes in Israel. So it sat in the port in Ashdod. I was learning already the system in Israel. I was like this young, this guy just off the boat, and I was, you sort of get suckered in because everyone's Jewish, and you think everyone's, and everyone is great, but I didn't learn the mentality. So whatever, they wouldn't let my bikes in, and but God was really good to me because I was driving up to one of my oldest son at the time, was a number of years ago, was in this Mechina Keshet, which is up north in the Golan before the army, and I saw an old guy driving a BSA motorcycle, which is these old bikes that they had in Israel, these Triumphs and BSAs, like Steve McQueen used to drive one. And I'm the whole Yom Kippur, I'm thinking about this motorcycle. I'm saying, wow, I can build bikes here. So after Yom Kippur, I went and I bought a whole bunch of bikes off Yad Shtayim. And I started to learn the mentality in Israel that I'll take an old bike, that has all the rishionot, and I'll learn how to break the system and build bikes here. And I learned that, one of the things that's different is that, every country, every state, even in the United States, every state's a different mentality. And one of the biggest things about designing and building is really the mentality of people who you work for. This past summer we had this design event in Jerusalem, and I was invited there, and they brought this architect, Fred Clark. I don't know if you ever heard of him. Fred Clark's probably, I think, the biggest architect in the world. His partner, Pelly, was actually my architecture teacher in Yale, and I mean, he hated me, Caesar Pelli. Not only did he hate me, he tried to get me thrown out of this school, which he almost succeeded, but whatever. And it was an amazing thing to hear, and it really feels good living in Israel, is that, so Fred Clark comes here. I was nervous to meet him. He's a big architect. He's done over 100 million square feet of architecture. You can imagine how big he is. So I meet him, and he says to me, "You're Mark Brown?" I said, "Yeah." I thought maybe his partner told him, remembered me. So he did something with his daughter, whatever it was. It wasn't really important. So he said to me that he heard that I do urban development. And he couldn't get over, this is someone who's not Jewish, he could not get over the level of quality and workmanship in Israel, to the point that since that time he's been in contact with me, trying to do a project together with me here in Israel. It's I really want to preface by saying, from my impression, the level of architecture and building in Israel is only getting better and better. I'm not dealing with the mentality. I'm not smart enough to understand that but is that the level and the creativity and the quality is only getting better and better. But I'll tell you one thing, that I was listening to a lot of these talks, and the truth is I really didn't understand most of it. But what I really did understand was that I think a lot of architects do one thing that's fundamentally a mistake, and that mistake is they don't run their architectural firm and builders as a business. And I'll explain to you what I mean. My father, may rest in peace, he really taught me everything. He said to me, when you give a price to a client, my father was a builder, and my father used to do all the work himself. So like when he'd build a house, say like 200, 300 meters, and when I say he did all the work himself, he did everything himself. No helpers except when my brothers and I were off from school. And my father would say, when you give a client a price, include everything. He said, people think you're very expensive, but it's honest, because you know what the job's going to cost. Don't be like every contractor, just another tosefet, another tosefet. He said, people might not take you, but you're giving them the real price. So we developed our architecture and building company. That was our policy. I decided that I'm going to start the business. I'm going to first start it as a business. And when we design, we basically design like with an Excel spreadsheet. Because I have to tell you something, we do gazillion-dollar homes, and if someone calls me for a bathroom, I go also. I do it for two reasons. I do it, one, because it's like, you should never think that you're too big for yourself. And number two is that you never know where jobs come from. So for me, it's really more about the clients than it is about the projects, because we're very selective on our clients. And you know how we choose a client? If they're assholes or not. Excuse my language, but really, like, it's the most important piece, because you have to be honest, and they have to be honest. The first question I ask a client, how much money are you willing to spend on the projects? You hear the husband, the wife, don't tell him, because then he'll just do it for that price. It's the stupidest thing. You have to know what their budget is to begin with. Because if you don't know what their budget is, then you're both going to get screwed. You're going to start the project, it's not going to get finished. So really the big difference that I see in America, when after you finish school and you work for these firms, and these firms are really, they're serious business firms. They teach you how to run a business. And even though everyone says, I'm not going to do architecture, it's a passion, what does it have to do with business? But if you're chasing money all day, you're not going to be able to design a beautiful house. So we really are, Dina and Hoover could tell you, we spend days, weeks, just on our budget for projects. It's probably more time consuming sometimes than the plans. But you know what? I have to be able to deliver a project. So that's one advice that I can give over. The other advice, when I hear prices what people give to other people, you can't be afraid to throw out the real number. Because think about the amount of hours you spend on plans. We have an expression in the office, like a lack of boundaries invite a lack of respect. So what we do in our office is, when we make an appointment 11 to 12, not 12:05, not 12:30. And you know what? It makes the client realize that they have to give you respect. And you could say, it's easy to say because of where you got. The truth is, I'm doing this 30 years, but you're right, it takes time to develop. You screw up in the beginning. They say the first 8 years you lose money, the second 8 years you spend paying back the debt that you lost money, and then you start to make money. And it's true for everybody. I always tell people, I just fake it better than people, It's a lot of smoke and mirrors, But you really have to set boundaries with your clients. You have to get signatures at every single stage. You have to understand that when there's changes, you have to charge them for you. Once you start becoming buddy-buddy with everybody, you lose the project. And then the project is just, it's not a real project. You're working for free. And I think as architects, it's, excuse me, God, for saying it, but like you're creating someone's life. You're creating a whole lifestyle for them. And you're so intimate with them. I always tell people, I don't think I'm an architect. I think like I'm a psychologist. You sit there with your clients and you hear all their problems and all their stories and everything. And through that, I was talking to Yoni about this before, was that like, to design is really to understand who the client is, period. It's not what I want. If a client likes everything in black, then I have to figure out how to make the best black possible. someone likes to cook linearly. We have to figure out how to do it. And you have to figure out why they're doing it, what they're saying. You know, in Israel, the dynamics is interesting because people don't realize that Israel's a young country, and truth is America's a young country. America doesn't have the same history like when I build in Europe. And so in America, you'll go to a lot of cities in America where shimur is so strict. For example, Manhattan has stricter shimur than if you go to Rome. In Rome, it's pretty easy to build. Easier than New York, because New York is such a new state, country, that they're very makbid on anything that's historical. Here in Israel, you know, the country's new, and it's a new country with 3,000 years of history. Totally screwed up, you know? So it's like, you go in and this is shimur, but keep this, do that. Like, you don't know if you're coming or going. But, and I'll tell you something else also. I'm not a naive person, is that I was the building commissioner in New York City for 1 year when Ray Irera, may rest in peace, got sick and ultimately died. In New York, it's not easy to get you can talk about New York, Florida, Seattle. It's not easy to get Issurim. There's a whole process. In New York, we only use expediters. I can't even go into the building department, which is also, like, it's about developing methods. In the office, most of our conversations in our offices is really about methods of what we're doing. And there's always a checks and balances. There's always a checks and balances of finances. And I really think that, listen, I'm talking to myself also because we go through this as well, is that you have to learn to run the business first as a business and then afterwards as an architect. Because no matter how many hours you figured, add another 1,000 to that. And it's difficult. You need to be compensated for it. So, whatever. So, you know, when Iran asked me to speak about the differences, I don't really see that much of a difference. I think in this room alone, the guys that I know, they're amazing architects. Amazing. And I think there's amazing buildings going up as well. There's things that are difficult, but it's not the, you know, I don't see anything from building. I've built pretty much all over the world. I don't see much of a difference. You have good people, bad people. I think, and I moved here because I think this is the place to be. You know, I said to my mother, I'm sorry I'm sharing personal stories. I was at a tekes for one of my kids in the army. I said to my mother went through the Shoah, my parents, and I said to my mother, because she once told me a story that before her father was murdered, she said, her father was standing there when the Nazis were coming into their town, and he said, one day there'll be a Jewish army. I said to my mother, can you imagine you have a grandchild, you know, serving in your own country? It's pretty cool to be here. So I see it from that perspective. You know, I have a lot of kids and grandkids, and you know, I'm lucky to be here. I love building in Israel. I have to tell you something. We did not a lot of projects, maybe 60 homes here, 70 homes, and it's amazing. You know, it really is amazing. Like I don't want to like say which one's better or which one's worse. It really is. You also get to an age that you just want to work with good people, and you got to be very selective with your clients. And you've got to weed out the bad clients right away. And when they talk to you disrespectfully, shut them down right away and throw them out of the office, because they don't deserve you. They don't deserve. It sounds whatever, but I'm telling you, that's what you got to do. And you really got to define your boundaries. You got to set the budgets for the client. And there's nothing to do. We do, like I said, 100,000 to 100 million jobs. There's no difference. Everyone has a budget. I have 1 or 2 clients that can do whatever I want. It's very rare. Everyone has a budget. That was a cool car, Bill. And I don't know, just to end off to say that you know, when I came into this event, you know, comparing it to events like we do in the States or in Europe, this is first class. This is as good as it gets anywhere. And the organization here and the people that run these things, it really is amazing. And you know, the subject of speaking between, you know, the difference between building here and building there, I always think it's really about building ourselves. That every day, like I said, I'm doing this 30 years and I grew up in the business. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not trying to improve something. There's not a day that goes by where I don't make changes. There's not a day that goes by where I'm trying to think more creatively, you know. And really, if you know, I wish I had, you know, didn't have to worry about the money, and I love just to build all day and design. But that's not, you know, that's not for now. But what we can do is really straighten out our business side. And our business side, to me, is the most important part. And I'm almost out of time. I just want to thank everybody. I'm sorry I didn't stare at everybody, but the light was killing my eyes. And I really appreciate everyone spending their time this afternoon listening to whatever I just said. And really, what's really, Yoni's going up next. He's 1,000 times better than me. And I see Iran over there. He's really great guys. Thank you very much.